We have asked Matshidiso Motsoeneng, a researcher at the Afro-Middle East Center, a research institute based in Johannesburg, to join us via Skype. Matshidiso, good evening and thank you for joining us on The Globe.
Thank you for having me.
Now, Matshidiso, developments taking place now, the possible formation of a new government. What's your take on this and the task ahead? What do you think lies ahead for the leadership of this new government?
I think since the protest started last year, the politicians have really been playing a game of waiting and thinking the protest would sort of fizzle out. And I think the intensification and the restarting of the protest, especially aimed at the central bank, has proven that this waiting game is really not going to work out as they hope. So I think this is sort of a very wake-up call to the politicians to actually recognize that the grievances of the street are actually quite legit, and people are calling for the government to actually listen to them.
Now, there's calls from all, spheres of Lebanon, including the government, well, the leadership, or, in terms of appointing technocrats. This is government experts and independents to deal with the country's crippling economic crisis. Do you think that, and this is now supposed to be made up of 18 experts, in leadership, who are going to ensure that Lebanon comes out of a crisis, a financial crisis that they're in? What's your take on this new formation of the government, and are we likely to see the protests subside as we saw earlier today, with riots breaking out, banks being, vandalized, and, soldiers on the streets of Lebanon?
I think the real issue in Lebanon has always been around the issue of the economy. Lebanon has the largest budget deficit in the world. Right now, the economy has really suffered. The currency is really, I think it's lost about 60% of its value against the dollar. And the politicians have been, sort of tasked with bringing up this so-called new government of experts, etc., actually will lead us into another political quagmire. Why would the elite that the people are protesting against even have an interest in appointing people that would apparently get rid of them and bring in an entire new type of government? So this is really where the issue is. The way things are in the region, and even Lebanon itself, where it's, there's high tensions that could, be very volatile and be some of the old issues be resurrected, issues around sectarianism, etc., be resurrected around these things. The political elite are really trying to find a sort of way out of this. And if that way means appointing the so-called independent experts, those experts will surely be still linked to the political elite, still be along sectarian lines, etc. Something that really has gone completely against the demands of the protesters. So there doesn't seem to really be a very clear-cut way in terms of, from the protesters, what exactly do they want? How do they want this appointment of these experts to take place? And I think this is also why the politicians have really also been trying to find a way around this issue. There's not really a clear line of communications between the government and the protesters.
Now, looking at what the protesters are also, bringing to the fore is the fact that they seem to be protesting against Diab's nomination. Is it the fact that he is backed by the militant Hezbollah group and, there's been intensified protests or intensified violence as the Sunnis, who apparently support Hariri, are seemingly fighting the fact that Diab is, the interim? And do they want new leadership? As you just mentioned, that they're not very clear on exactly what it is they want. And it doesn't really mean that once the economy is back on track and everything is back to stability, the protests will subside? Do you think that this will happen, or are they now pushing different agendas?
It seems, I mean, at least in the past couple of days, the issue of the economy has sort of prioritized more than, let's say, perhaps the demands that they were making last year, where they asked specifically, an end to the current political system, a new system that's not based on sectarian lines, resignation of all government and parliament members, etc. This time around, and especially because the major protests which have seen with the breakout of the violent clashes, the injuries, etc., have been aimed towards banks. Many banks have been vandalized. At one bank, I think the central bank, they attempted to hold hostage some of the employees at the central bank, etc. And the big issue is because banks have, I mean, although not formally, very informally, they've restricted the withdrawal of dollars to only about $1,000 per person. They've also restricted the international transfers of dollars. Because the government is being running out of dollars, not able to service their debt levels, and some of the sanctions, etc., have really started harming the economy. An economy that really does not have the capacity to self-sustain itself. So yeah, the issue of the economy is quite high up on the agenda. It's not quite clear if that is, I think in the short term, if that issue is solved, it might halt the protests, but in the long term, the political grievances are still there, and they might back.
Now, also the fact that seemingly the protesters are fighting the fact that Hezbollah and its allies have decided to take the country's top Sunni posts, and also bearing in mind that in his address to reporters, Diab has asked for a chance to be given a chance to form an exceptional government that can work to resolving the country's many problems which have accumulated over 30 years. Do you think he will be given this chance?
I mean, that's quite questionable. Diab, it is not his first time in government. He was previously the education minister. He's been in the political circles. He has been in positions of power where he could have possibly brought in a different agenda, et cetera, et cetera. But again, we don't know if his new installation would even lead to differences. I mean, the fact that the political system in Lebanon is so divided and based on these sectarian lines with parties that have completely different objectives, etc., might actually make this task more momentous than he actually makes it out to be. But again, Diab, like Saad and the previous people that have been, nominated towards this post are also still part of the political elite, which goes against the demands of the protesters. So really, it's not that it's a certain political faction that doesn't have confidence in him because he comes from a different camp, but it's also the protesters themselves that say you are also part of the political elite, which we are protesting against. So you do not fit the criteria despite the promises. And again, as I said, he's part of the political elite. If he's the person that then gets to appoint this government of technocrats, etc., how would they be non-partisan, not part of the political elite, not getting in those positions to continue to serve the interests of the different political parties that have continued this trajectory in which the Lebanese find themselves in today.
Now, we've seen senior U.S. official, who visited Lebanon and got there in Hale, that's Undersecretary of State for Political Affairs, David Hale. When he was there, he spoke of how they need to ensure that they undertake credible and visible, commitment to reform. And as well, there's also, where Western countries are holding billions in loans and and grants, made by international donors, but wanting to ensure that there is stability, there's no corruption, and, there's a way forward where there's peace and not protests and people are comfortable. Do you think that this is a motivation for Diab and the new government to be formed with regards to ensuring that stability is returned to the country, to ensure that they get these loans and these monies that have been promised to them?
I think at this point, in terms of the problems surrounding the economy of Lebanon, more loans are really not going to solve their problem. As it is already, they are not able to service the debt that they already have. Many credit rating agencies are already, speaking about basically giving Lebanon a status of default, which essentially, places them in a category of a state that has failed to service asset or doesn't even have enough assets to secure its own economy. So loans at this point are not really going to help them. There has been aid pledges since last year made by different countries, Qatar being one of the biggest ones, and other countries such as the United Arab Emirates. The issue here lies in the fact that the political system right now in Lebanon is the same system that took about a year to form a government after elections that went relatively peaceful and well, and but these political tensions have really prevented the government from doing so many things. It took about 6 months after the government was formed to even pass a budget in Parliament. Some of the key portfolios are still very contentious because, the March 8th block fight over with the March 14th block. So there is these potential political issues that might impede any economic objectives being achieved, especially in the long term.
Matshidiso, always a pleasure chatting to you, and thank you for your insights into the developments taking place in Lebanon. That is Matshidiso Motsoeneng, a researcher at the Afro-Middle East Center, a research institute based in Johannesburg, joining us via Skype.